G'day car enthusiasts, today we're going over the BMW X1, this car given to me by the good people at BMW. You're looking at the M Sports package 2019 model. This particular version is the X Drive, that is the S Drive 18i, which is in fact a 1.5 litre 3-cylinder turbo with a whopping 103 kilowatts and about 220 raw newton meters of torque. It sounds kind of small, but it's, for the car it is, there is enough power. Let's go over some of the little specs and features of this car, starting in the back with one of the very few features that this car has, which is a powered tailgate. I've recently done a review on the X3 and I know that this car in fact isn't that much smaller. It's quite practical, and I think when you can see storage under here where you could lift that up, no spare tire of course because we're running on the run flats. One little feature I did like that was quite cool was I bought a 6-pack the other day and I found this little net here that was already down, and then when I put the 6-pack in there, this actually lifted up and held it in there perfectly. Charging point as we expect, one light. This little parcel shelf cover does come off and you can throw it away, that is store it elsewhere, including storing it under here, which is pretty cool. And it comes with a standard first aid kit. Really like this brushed metal finish here, something very nice indeed for when you're throwing luggage in and out. This stuff will wear out. I've seen people put stickers over here or some type of protection sticker or padding or rubber over there to stop it getting scratched. This car is dirty, my fault this time because we've had a lot of rain. It's been pretty rough in Australia and we finally had some rain, so this car is showing a bit of mud and dirt on it, but overall I think the white is really nice. Again, this is the M Sports package or the M Sports version, and when we're looking at the M Sports version, check out those wheels. Nothing too flash. I've always said BMW kind of struggles with wheels up until recently, but these wheels aren't too bad. Lots of stopping power. You're looking at 225s, 50, 18s, so they're the 18-inch rims. And this car has about 4,000 kilometers on it, so you can see it's still very tidy at the moment. I do like the front of the car. Let's talk about the grille. We know with the 7 it was crazy, with the 3 it was getting less crazy, but with the 1 I think it's the perfect size. But what I don't like about the grille, I don't know why they did this. Actually I do know why they did it. It helps deflect air over the top here and stops catching it, but it just looks, I don't know, cheap and incomplete. I do like that they've made it a matte versus gloss here, but this bit really rubs me the wrong way. Again, completely subjective in my opinion only. Maybe you like it, but I just think it makes the grille look kind of, I don't know, cheap and incomplete. I'd like to see this in a matte black or a gloss black rim, but we've often seen the chrome around the outsides of the grills in BMW, and I'm sure that you could buy that off eBay or aftermarket in all black, matte black, gloss black, or whichever you prefer. A couple of things that do stick out to me with the finish. I can't believe that BMW would create a finish like this. You can see around the lights here, look at it. I expect far more from BMW than this. It's just cheap finishes around there, but the lights on this particular version are wonderful. They have done very well, BMW, with their lights over not just the way they look, but the way they operate. And you can see with this little light here, that's for when you're turning, you get sort of sideways light at lower speed, so you can see where you're going around the corner to an extent. Down here into the vents, fake vents, good here, but they seem to be going further back into the wheel arch, and you can see all the way through there, so that's pretty good that we don't have those fake vents. And that is quite different to other cars that we've seen, particularly even the BMW, where they have vents that lead to nowhere. We looked at the X3 and the X5 where these vents went nowhere, but in the X1 of all cars they do actually go through. So well done BMW for getting those vents done there. Let's check out what's happening inside this car. Now these cars sell from anywhere between around 45 to 60,000 in Australia, and of course being BMW you can put so many features in it and so many additions to the car that the price just goes up, up, up and away. But this car would be around the $50,000 mark, noting that it has virtually no features, which keeps it quite simple. You can see I've put a couple of bottles in there so you can see the storage into the center console. 2 bottles there, fit another bottle under there, and some junk good door bins, and this beautiful, what I like about this car, and BMW has it on many, is the piano gloss black. That piano black is just marvelous, except for when you get dust on it. Another thing I do like about this car in particular, we can see it's got the M Sport seats, which means you've got higher sides, a bit more buckety. But in this version, it's the suede as opposed to leather, and I really like this. I'm not sure how it would wear over time, particularly when you get stains on it, but comparative to shiny leather, I would actually opt for this. If I was buying this car, I'd get this because it just really is comfortable, and it's cool in summer and warm in winter. Again, we have the extendable thigh support here. In some cars this is electric, but even in my 6 Series it's not electric, and I don't mind that at all because you can just grab it and push it straight out. These seats are in fact very narrow though. Even when I had a young lady in this car who's very tiny, she even pointed out, oh, these seats are really tight. Now I'm 6'3" and 100 kilos, so when I got in here, my shoulders and my sides really struggled to get in there, but I wonder over time if that would actually mold a little bit to you. In any case, I was actually surprised how tight those seats are. Onto the center console, it is in fact a very, very simple system. Now what's funny about the X1 is that it picks up on some of the places where the X3 drops. For example, it's got all 8 buttons here. These shortcuts are, to me, very important, and as I've said many times, I'd actually like to see a second row here of shortcuts, because that would in fact help you go through the iDrive system, which has now more and more features. Because there are so many features here, you can in fact spend a lot of time searching for what you want to do within the iDrive system. Now what I'll point out here with the screen is BMW is brilliant where it thinks about stuff that you otherwise may not. What I'm talking about here is the visual of that screen. So these screens are touch, but not many people touch it. The reason why I don't like touch screens is A, because I think they're dangerous because I'm reaching so far forward. B, most of the stuff I can control is right down here. C, I'd normally put shortcuts there. But D, it leaves fingerprints all over it. So I was recently driving a Hyundai and they had a touch screen, but the touch screen was far more forward. And the problem with that is you can see that they put it forward so you can reach it. So when you're driving, you can reach and you can touch this screen here. But what BMW does is that they line this screen up perfectly with your cluster. So I'm not sure if I can really get a visual of this, but if you were to look down the side here, this screen and this screen is actually in perfect line. What does that mean? That means when you're driving, you're not really adjusting your eyes to deal with different depths. And because of that, it's actually less eye fatigue on going through from this vision to that vision. Trust me, when you drive a Hyundai, if you get a chance, and you'll see that there's like a 6-inch difference between where the cluster is and where the center screen is, and it really throws your eyes off while you're driving. Ultimately though, when you've got a head-up display, which I think you can see there, it's kind of flickering, it does make driving a hell of a lot easier. In my opinion, I think in the future, head-up displays will be the law, and the reason why they'll be the law is because they make sure that you never take your eyes off the road, and it's just very easy to use. But back into the center console, I thought when I initially drove this that the controls here were quite disappointing, so I'll start up this bad boy. And you can see your air conditioning here is, the whole unit is so simple and basic. It's like, oh, there's no dual climate control. Now you could probably up-spec it. I'm not sure you can up-spec it dual climate control on the X1, noting it is quite a low modeled X series car, but this looks quite clunky to me, the way that you switch between modes. And to wind up the fan, instead of being a dial, it's actually old buttons where you're winding it up. Now that's not uncommon in BMW, we are winding it up here, but I don't know, these lights, and when I first started to drive they looked kind of clunky, but I've been driving this thing for 4 days and I've actually changed my mind about being so judgmental about this. Why? Because its beauty is in its simplicity. If you aren't into all the bells and whistles, this center control is great. You've got everything you need right here. These would be slots for heated seats if you wanted to upgrade here. And essentially it's all there, it's all simple, it all makes sense, it all works, and there's no real bells and whistles to confuse anything or anyone. It is a very straightforward system for a daily run around. Now note, this car doesn't have a sunroof, which I'm more than happy with because that helps lower the center of gravity. Once you start putting a sunroof on any vehicle, you're putting a lot of weight on top of that vehicle, which is very counterintuitive, particularly when you've got a high center of gravity anyway, being an SUV. And the other thing is, because I'm a tall guy, I like the big headroom here. Now, there's enough headroom even with or without the sunroof, but without the sunroof, you get more space, less weight, and less things to go wrong. Also, as I've mentioned before, with some of the sunroofs that the cheaper cars have, instead of having a thick padded roof covering that sunroof when it's shut, they only have like a thin stocking material which lets light in, which does matter when you're in Australia and other hot climates, and also lets lots of noise in when there is rain or hail belting down. Over into the back seat, as you can see, quite a nice and simple finish, not much room there, but let's go into the back. As you'd expect, big door bins to chuck in your big water bottle, but when we go further in, we can see there are USB slots there. Now that's USB-C, so you couldn't use a standard USB, you need the new USB-C, which the reason why USB-C is good is because you can put it in either way. That is, you don't have to worry about the cord being upside down, you can just chuck it straight in and away you go. Looking at the center armrest here, just like with the X3, we have the same type of drink holder setup. Now, to fold these seats down, I actually prefer to have the lever or button in the very back compartment, because normally when you open the boot, you want to put something big in there, you pull a lever and down the seats go. But in this car, you've got this little tab here, which is kind of cheap. Overall, this is a great little car that I would recommend for someone who is wanting to zip around town without any huge bells or whistles, but having the name, safety and security of a BMW. It is a really easy car to drive, almost boring. This car doesn't have paddle shift. Now, some people don't care about that. I personally do, but if you're one that never uses paddle shift anyway, then you wouldn't need to get paddle shift. Now again, you could option this car up to get paddle shift, but because you're looking at the absolute base model here, and you can hear I'm not sure if you can hear it, it's very quiet, it's running at the moment. It doesn't actually make too much noise, but surprisingly, it's not that good on fuel. It's not that it's bad on fuel, it's just that I thought for a 3-cylinder car, you'd be getting a much better return. But looking at the stats here, it's got a combined 5.8 to around town, or 6.8 in urban and 5.2 on the highway. I'm telling you, after driving this for 4 days, and I'm not flogging it because it's not really a car you want to flog, it's just a little cruiser, it's a little runaround, I'm getting 8.1 per 100. So those numbers are very conservative there. Now 8.1 per 100 out of a 3-cylinder engine, I'm thinking, well, why bother? Why would you get a 3-cylinder? Why not just get a 4-cylinder or a diesel? So you're sacrificing a lot of power for very little return on that fuel efficiency. In fact, looking right now, you can see I'm actually getting 8.4 per 100. Now, of course, I'm not in a built-up area, so I'm not using super urban here. I'm in I would actually argue that's combined, and that's nothing like the sticker said. The sticker said that I should be getting combined fuel consumption of 5.8. That is just simply not the case. It is nowhere near the case. I would be understanding if it was like 6, if we were seeing 6 on this gauge right now, but 8.4 is completely different to the estimates of 5.8. So this car is in fact not that fuel efficient. And keep in mind also, I'm only running around by myself. If I started putting people in this car and was carrying a fair bit of weight, with a little 3-cylinder engine, that little bad boy would be working hard, real hard, and that in turn would start putting the fuel up. Now, one little feature I did program into a shortcut here to show you, which I thought was cool, especially in a 1.8 litre car, is we press my little shortcut here to my little cluster gauge, a little bit blurry at the moment. There we go, clear that up. And we can see kilowatts and torque. This isn't unique to this car particularly. I just thought it was cool that it was in a 1.5 litre. The car is called an S-Drive 18i X1, all these names, but it's actually a 1.5 litre and it's a 3-cylinder. So in the olden days with BMW, if a car was called, as an example, a 318, it used to be a 1.8 litre. If it was called a 320, it was a 2 litre. If it was called a 325, it was a 2.5 litre. A few years ago, that all changed, and those last two numbers do not align exactly with the capacity or size of the engine. Anyway, looking at this gauge here, we can see that when I give it a bit of a rev, you can see that the newts go up, and I really like how these little markers here show where you've been. They drop down to 0 after you've stopped for a while, and you can see they drop down automatically then, but if I pump it out, you can see and hear that raw power of 3 cylinders. Overall, not a bad little car, nothing exciting. Would I buy it for the price that it is? Well, it's a pretty high price for what it is, that being a very simple runaround car, and comparative to other cars out there that are not BMWs but have way more features as standard. What is really lacking in this car is the features. What is also lacking in this car is the power, which you would expect. Again, you could get a bigger engine in this, and I'd like to actually drive a bigger engine in this small little car. I think it's lacking fuel efficiency. I think it's lacking for the price that you're paying. I think it does hold a simple wow factor for people who don't care. That is, you're getting in a nice BMW, it's got the BMW badge. I did notice that even though this is a new BMW, they're taking the old steering wheel to put it on the new car. So if you look at a brand new X3 or X5 or X7, the steering wheels are completely upgraded and brand new and a different design to this. Whereas this design, this steering wheel, was taken off the last series of BMWs. So you'll see this steering wheel on ones that have already been run off the line, that is, they're not producing them anymore. I just wonder if they had a whole heap of steering wheels left in the factory, or they just said, well, we'll use this mold for the X1 because this steering wheel is the old type of steering wheel. I'm not really fussed by it. To me, I think it's a great little steering wheel, but as I said, the very new X3, 5 and 7 have a different shaped wheel where it isn't circular, it's kind of triangular, which ironically goes back to the model before this steering wheel where it was a different shape as well. Down to this little storage unit here. This is a good little hidey hole. I had a 5 Series that had one of these, actually many 5 Series that had these, and then when I moved to my 6 Series it didn't have this. I like this, but what's disappointing about this, and come on BMW, you should do better than this, is that this is just plastic here. That is, typically these are like felt lined. They've got this lining here. If I put anything in there, it would be slip sliding around and I'd hear it non-stop. Now, it wouldn't matter if you're just putting in, I don't know, something that's like paper or cardboard that didn't slide per se, but again, I just expect more when I'm spending up to $60,000 for a brand new BMW. Those little things do matter. No charging pad, but there is a USB port here and the 12-volt socket. And that USB is standard USB, it's not the C-type, so you can get away with it there. And in this bin down here we have another USB, but that one is C-type. So we've got different types of USB slots here. In total I can count 1 here, 2 there, and 2 more in the back, so that's 4 USB slots. Center arm console. This is the type of finish we like, BMW, this beautiful double stitching. That would be, I'm presuming it part of the M Sports package, and you can see that double blue stitching all along this leather here. Very nice finish, exactly what we'd expect from BMW. And a little hidey hole here also for mobile phone. I think this is obsolete now. I've said this in other reviews about these mobile phone holders that they put in BMW. The thing is, they only hold a certain number of phones, and most people have covers on their phones. So this is designed typically for a phone that's not in a cover. But how many people do you know don't have a phone in a cover? It's high risk. As soon as you drop your phone, it smashes to pieces. So pretty much everyone's got a cover. And I don't know why they don't make it deeper so I could put a phone in here with a cover. Now, that might be charging. I notice here, there's a blue light that goes on there. I just picked it up, there we go, we just discovered that together. That's pretty Gucci, that little blue light goes on there when I push this back to a certain point, probably indicating that I've got to the point where it's locked in and or charging. It doesn't have the symbol for charging there, but I do note it does have that light there, so I'm assuming it does charge. Leave your comments below, does it charge? Could look it up in the manual, but because it's the X1, I'm not overly excited about this car. Into the glove box, rubber mat there. That rubber mat's not felt, but it's a bit better because things wouldn't be sliding around there. And I can't see any USB slots in there either, but I can see further down, it looks like, open that up. Yeah, there's your fuse box. So that's where the boys should be working on the fuses and probably running diagnosis to see how she's going. All right, I'm not going to bother taking it for a drive because I don't have a mount, and I won't be holding the phone while I'm driving because that's illegal. But overall it handles well, noting this is a front wheel drive. I did get the chance to drive it in the wet. I don't like front wheel drives, nothing against the good people at BMW, I just think front wheel drives are a disaster. And This, in many instances, proved that it handled very well for a front-wheel drive, but you just can't get the stability and traction of a rear or all-wheel drive, particularly noting this is an SUV style car. Many people don't need the all-wheel drive, or even know, if they're not real driving enthusiasts, that they're driving a front or a rear-wheel drive. But for those who do know, you can't really accept a front-wheel drive car, particularly in this type of vehicle. Leave your comments below. Would you buy this bad boy? Have you got one? Or would it be better off just going for the X3? In my opinion, I think I'd just go for the X3 before I accepted the X1, unless I was living in a really tight city where I wanted to zip around and get a little bit more freedom of ducking between cars and having more options in parking spots. Thanks for listening, happy driving, and I'll talk to you next time.